Today, I'm going to beat Pokemon Emerald using only Pikachu. If my experience tells me anything about how this run is going to go, it's going to be dreadfully difficult. Because Pikachu's not really a good solo challenge Pokemon. Number one, it's an electric type, which just don't have good coverage for these kind of challenges. Number two, it's a first stage Pokemon. And number three, as a kid, I had to use this thing in yellow version, and it really wasn't good in that game. But maybe Emerald is different. Maybe Pikachu is a lot better in this game. Let's find out today. These are the rules for the solo challenge. They're also in the description so you can reference them later. For base stats, Pikachu has 35 HP, 55 attack, 30 defense, 90 speed, 50 special attack, and 40 special defense. So it's slightly biased towards its physical attack, and it has way too much speed for a solo challenge, so I'm going to run a Brave Nature increasing its attack and lowering its speed. For an ability, it has static, and it's going to be really nice for me to turn that ability against my opponents. Typically, it's just frustrating me. It feels a little bit counterintuitive, but today I have had the rival pick Mudkip, the water type starter. That's because eventually it's going to be a ground type, which of course is going to give Pikachu the most difficulties. As a mono electric type, it only has one weakness to the ground type, which is very concerning when Steven Stone at the end of the game has a ton of Pokemon that know Earthquake. Also, similar to Pokemon Yellow and Generation 1, the first gym leader in Generation 3 is a rock type specialist, and two of her Pokemon are ground types. Pikachu starts with Thundershock and Growl, giving it no moves that can attack Roxanne's Geodude. Then through level up, it gets Tail Whip at level 6, Thunder Wave at 8, Quick Attack at level 11, but I don't think that's going to be enough to knock out the Geodude. At level 15, it gets Double Team, which is the obvious solution for her, but as per my rules, I won't be able to use this move until level 100. But since Pikachu does learn it through level up, I will be able to use the move reminder and then potentially utilize Double Team against Steven Stone at the end of the game if I do get to the maximum level. And with an electric type, I think that that's more than likely in this run. At level 20, Pikachu gets Slam, and I think that that's going to be its best option against Roxanne. Beyond that, we get one more excellent move, Thunderbolt at only level 26. Then Agility, Thunder, and Light Screen, all of which I don't think are going to be useful today. I'll talk about Pikachu's coverage through TM and HMs as well as tutors later on. For now, let's focus on defeating Roxanne. Throughout the early game, I'm going to fight every single trainer that I can. I don't need to save Lady Cindy for later on so that I can use Thief to steal nuggets. Number one, Pikachu doesn't learn Thief, and I also don't need to buy anything from the game corner, since I'm going to learn Thunderbolt through level up before that would be possible. Inside the forest while fighting the Team Aqua Grunt, Pikachu levels up to 11 and gets access to Quick Attack. I have to be careful which move I unlearn at this point in the run, since Thundershock is useful against pretty much every target. Growl and Tail Whip will both be useful against Roxanne, so the only move I can get rid of right now is Thunder Wave. Continuing to fight every trainer, I went up against Lass Haley at the end of the route. Her Shroomish has Effect Spore, and because of it, Pikachu gets poisoned, but I thought I had enough health to walk all the way to the Pokemon Center and heal. Although I extended my route slightly, trying to pick up Cut first. I really thought that I was going to have enough health. Turns out I don't, and just a few steps away from the Pokemon Center, I end up blacking out, going all the way back to Petalburg City. This is just a first playthrough. I'm not going to restart now. Plus, this is pretty nostalgic. This used to happen to me all the time as a kid. I would just barely make it to the next Pokemon Center, black out, and then have to navigate some annoying dungeon like Rock Tunnel or the forest to get back to my goal destination. Plus, having to traverse the forest again isn't really wasted time since I can go through grass and fight a bunch of wild Pokemon. I'm committed to this training because I think that Pikachu doesn't really stand a chance against Roxanne if I'm not allowing Double Team before it gets access to Slam. And in order to get level 20 with a medium fast growth rate, I'm going to need to fight wild Pokemon over and over after beating every single trainer. In the early game, there are 5 trainers available that have Geodude on their team. 2 hikers before Rust Turf Tunnel, and 3 NPCs inside of the gym. These trainers are annoying for Pikachu to fight, so I waited until level 17 to start taking them on. Even then they're slow to defeat, but I think that the trainer boosted experience is worth it. The last of them is Hiker Mark. He gets me to level 20, and then I choose to teach Slam in the place of Thundershock. This initially seems like a weird choice, but I'm going to learn Thunderbolt in only 6 levels, and I think having more damage dealing moves for Roxanne will be key. I might run out of PP on Slam, especially especially because it's inaccurate. It only hits 75% of the time, and that's definitely going to be a nuisance against Roxanne. I deposit my HM user Abra just in case I black out, then I can at least gain experience from Roxanne, and I also do my Mart trip now so that I won't be losing any money. Now it's time to see if I've prepared enough with Pikachu to take on the first gym leader. I need to start things off by feeling out how many uses of Growl and Tail Whip are going to be appropriate for the Geodude. I decided on one Growl on turn 1 to reduce damage, and then one Tail Whip to increase damage from Slam. Still though, Rock Tomb is doing a decent amount to Pikachu every turn. Turn 3 I go for Slam, and it does about 1/3 to the Geodude, which I think is good because then it's going to go into potion range, and I can burn through her potions before the Nose Pass comes in. Unfortunately though, Geodude gets a critical hit, and because of that, even though I have an Oran Berry, Pikachu is not going to have the ability to last long enough in order to win here. But I can just take a blackout. I do knock out the second Geodude for a little bit more experience, although I have 2 hit points left, so of course Nose Pass finishes me. Things can go much worse than this. In the second fight, I don't even knock out the first Geodude. I'm not saving between each fight because that's going to waste a lot of time, but in an instance like this, that's a disadvantage since I have to take the blackout and walk all the way back into the gym even though I didn't gain any experience. Let's talk briefly about the Brave nature here. Having a lower speed stat means that her Pokemon are less likely to continue using Rock Tomb. This is because in Generation 3 the AI views it as a speed control move, and once the enemy is faster than your Pokemon, then they discontinue using it. For the Geodude this isn't really relevant since then they just start using Rock Throw, which is going to do the most damage. But for the Nose Pass this is very relevant because its next best move is Tackle, usually ending up in the Nose Pass randomizing between its 3 normal moves, Block and Harden being the other 2. Avoiding Rock Tomb on Nose Pass as soon as possible is ideal for Pikachu, and by the time I'm fighting the second Geodude, my speed is low enough for this to be the case. The only way that Nose Pass now is going to go for Rock Tomb is if it sees that Rock Tomb will do enough damage to knock out Pikachu, and that's where I'm a little bit disappointed because my health is so low by the time I'm fighting the second Geodude that I think Nose Pass is always just going to go for moves that knock Pikachu out. And in this case, while I do make it by the second Geodude, still my health is pitifully low, and Nose Pass just goes for Tackle, which also has enough damage. I tried one more time, but it's still not working, and while I am slowly leveling up, I think fighting wild Pokemon is going to be faster than this. I trained until I ran out of PP, which does not get me to the next damage rounding threshold at level 23. I went back briefly, fought Roxanne again, and it still isn't working. So I continued my grind up to level 23 before coming back and really committing to this fight. This time around, things are going much better for Pikachu. I'm able to knock out both of the Geodude and move on to the Nose Pass with green health left over. This is ideal. Also, my speed stat is 16 after being hit by 4 Rock Tombs, which is 1 point lower than Nose Pass. So the Brave nature is doing what it needs to here, lowering my speed just enough so that Nose Pass isn't attacking with Rock Tomb. Whenever it makes contact with Tackle, there's a chance that it paralyzes itself, which is perfect. I lower its attack with Growl 3 times, and then I go for Tail Whip, lowering its defense. The issue here is that it just loves to set up Harden whenever I lower its defense enough, but it also then scores a critical hit with Rock Tomb, bringing Pikachu to 3 health. I go for Slam. It does good damage, but not enough. Nose Pass finishes Pikachu again. In the next battle, I get a little bit more precise. After critical hitting the first Geodude, on the second one, I ensured that I set up Tail Whip 2 times so that I'm not knocking it out with 1 attack from Slam. Then she's going to use her potions here on this Geodude before the Nose Pass, and luckily both of them before I move on to her ace. I have green health once again, but unfortunately the critical hit on the first Geodude means she didn't hit as many Rock Tombs, so I am outspeeding the Nose Pass on turn 1, but it goes for Rock Tomb, speed controls me, Pikachu's Oran Berry activates, and I lower its attack even more. At -2, I felt like it was enough provided the Nose Pass isn't getting critical hits. I begin using Tail Whip. Again, the Nose Pass likes to counter this by using Harden. It's very annoying, but eventually it will attack with Tackle, and when it does, it's only dealing 3 hit points in damage. That lets me soften it up a little bit more with Tail Whip. However, eventually I just decided to discontinue this strategy altogether because I'm going to run out of Tail Whip before I impact its defense stat at all. Instead, maybe I should just go for Slam and start doing some damage. My first hit did roughly 1/4, and then after a bunch more Tail Whips, I decided to go for another attack, which brings Nose Pass to orange health, then to red on the next turn, and she can't heal, so So that's that. For Nose Pass, Pikachu finally defeats Roxanne. It gets a first split of 30 minutes and 11 seconds. Things are off to a slow start, but from here I anticipate that Pikachu's progress is going to speed up. After all, it's very overleveled, and it's also got an attack boost from Roxanne's badge. On Dewford Island, right away I pick up the Silk Scarf. This boosts the power of normal type moves by 10%. Just before the cave, I fight Fisherman Ned. I want to be doing as many optional battles as I can right now, just so I'm working towards level 26 and access to Thunderbolt, because using Slam just never feels very good. I think I make a bit of a mistake here. After delivering the letter to Stephen Stone, I could have gone to Slateport Beach and continued my training, or I could have fought the trainers inside of the gym, but instead I just went straight for Brawly and battled him at level 24. Machop is first, I miss a slam, and then Machop activates static. I guess this is an okay way for the fight to start, but then my second slam misses, Machop goes for bulk up, and now the fight has basically fallen apart. I kept trying, and while I am able to knock out the Machop as well as the Meditite since it can't attack, by the time I make it to the Makuhita, my health is just too low and it only needs one attack to knock Pikachu out. But Slam did do more than half. Because of that, I felt fairly confident trying again. But then the next fight goes better, and I make it to the Makuhita, but I'm still not able to get by it. Slam first turn does more than half, it goes for bulk up, and then Brawly heals it. Because of the healing and the defense boost from bulk up, I'm not doing enough damage, giving the Makuhita the time it needs. So I don't think fighting Brawly makes sense. Instead, I'm going to battle trainers inside the gym and try to level up to 26. Obviously, this will be an easy gym once I get access to Thunderbolt. Unfortunately, just the gym trainers aren't enough. This only brings me close to level 25, so I do go to Slateport Beach to continue my training. Immediately after stepping off the ship, I grab the soft sand, which will be useful in just a little bit. Inside the Soda Pop house, I fight the final trainer in this area. This levels Pikachu up to 26, and I teach Thunderbolt in the place of Growl. Back to Brawly, Thunderbolt one-shots Machop, Thunderbolt one-shots Meditite, and Thunderbolt one-shots Makuhita. This battle went from difficult to completely trivial. With it finished, now let's talk about Pikachu's move pool. When I sat down to do this challenge, I was really hoping that it would get access to Bulk Up, which is one of the best TMs in the entire game. Raising physical attack is good for a physical attacker like Pikachu, and raising defense is extremely helpful against Stephen Stone, especially when you're weak to moves like Earthquake. But unfortunately for Pikachu, it has no such luck. While it does learn a bunch of fighting moves, it does not get access to Bulk Up. Of the fighting moves it does get access to, the only two that have the potential to be useful are Brick Break and Rock Smash. Rock Smash sometimes solves Watson's Magneton, and then Brick Break is just very good at the end of the game, but I need to make it to the 8th gym in order to obtain it. Iron Tail is available after I beat the 8th gym leader since Waterfall is required to obtain it, and that leaves Pikachu with only 3 coverage moves. Rollout from the Move Tutor in Mauville City, and Dig and Hidden Power Ground after I defeat Watson, which is pretty unfortunate timing. North of Slateport City, I continued training. I'll have to reflect on if this was the right choice after my first run, but right now I'm feeling a little bit worried about the rival's Marshtomp, which does know a ground type move in the form of Mud Shot. I also want to make sure that I'm preparing adequately for the late game. I assume Pikachu's not going to be able to win this challenge under level 100, so I'm going to obtain every single rare candy in the game. The first one comes from the Trick House, which requires some optional trainers, and generally this is the best rare candy to skip since it requires so much time investment, but for Pikachu it's definitely worth it. Okay, time for the rival. He leads with Lombre, so I'm going to use Thunderbolt. It's neutrally effective and has to two-shot, allowing the enemy to use Swift once before I knock it out. Next, he sends in his Marshtomp. This is where things are going to get difficult. I have to use Slam, and of course Pikachu misses. Marshtomp's Mud Shot then gets a critical hit, and that's it for the battle. 1 loss already. Okay, so things can go better for me. I can roll enough damage to knock out the Lombre in a single hit. And then against the Marshtomp, it cannot critical hit, plus I can actually damage it with Slam, which does more than half. Mudshot, however, does more than half to Pikachu as well, and it lowers my speed, but not enough. Even though I have a brave nature, Pikachu moves first, knocks out the Marshtomp with a critical hit this time, although I didn't need it, and then Slugma is easy to clean up with Thunderbolt. Before taking on Watson, I did some optional training, leveling Pikachu up over the next damage rounding threshold at level 33. Again, I don't know if all of this training is strictly required, but it's definitely going to help me against the electric type specialist who does resist all of my attacks, at least when considering Magneton. I had to make a choice about teaching Pikachu agility, and I just don't think that this setup move is useful in a solo challenge with a Pokemon that's very fast, especially an Emerald version where all of the NPC Pokemon are extremely slow. And unlike in Generation 1, this move is not nearly as good at countering out the speed debuff from Paralysis. Alright, time to get frustrated. I'm going to be using Slam against Watson. It's able to knock out his Voltorb with no issues, but then against Electrike it's going to trigger static 33% of the time that it hits. Unfortunately, in this case, it does right away, and I'm holding the Silk Scarf because I wanted to improve the damage of normal type moves, so I'm paralyzed for the Magneton. And since it's a Steel type, I think using electric moves here is the best choice. But unfortunately, Pikachu also gets confused, hits itself, takes a bunch of damage from Sonic Boom, and Thunderbolt is doing roughly 1/3. I wish it was doing a little bit less damage in this case because it takes Magneton to red health, so Watson heals it with a super potion. Then, while I do snap out of confusion and get a critical hit, Watson just heals again with another super potion, and I have to continue grinding away with Thunderbolt. Pikachu is able to knock out the Magneton, but then the following Manectric comes in, and it goes for Howl, followed by Quick Attack, knocking Pikachu out in 2 turns. I ended up getting really close here. Because of this, I doubled down and tried Watson 2 more times using the same strategy, and honestly, it just isn't working. I did swap out the Silk Scarf for the Cherry Berry since I don't need the extra damage, but by the end, when I reach Manectric, I'm still paralyzed, my health is low, and it gets me again. Now, I'm gonna make a cut here to my 3rd battle, and it looks almost identical to the previous one. I swear this is a different battle. I had 8 hit points going into the Manectric for a 2nd time. 3 battles all ending in a similar fashion. I think that I need a new strategy for Watson. For Pikachu, there really is only one option at this point in the game. Using the move tutor to teach Rollout, which I put in the place of Growl. With this move, I can start setting up on the Voltorb, then one-shot the following Electrike and have massive damage for the Magneton. While I'm not able to one-hit, this is the 4th turn of Rollout, so I continue on the next turn with my 5th attack, and this finishes the Steel type. No super potions this time. Unfortunately, Rollout's done now, but I can just start using Slam against the Manectric. I miss turn 1, it uses Thunder Wave, but I still have my Cherry Berry. Turn 2, Slam does half, it uses Thunder Wave, paralyzing, then goes for Shockwave, which is not very effective, and my follow-up Slam does enough damage, defeating Watson. I think it should be clear to all of us that Rollout is the superior strategy against Watson for Pikachu. I'll be able to save a decent amount of time during this split in my 2nd playthrough, provided that Rollout isn't missing a lot. That's always a risk that you take when using a move like this. Now that I can use Rock Smash outside of battle, I can talk to this guy and get the Secret Power TM, which is a more reliable normal type move to use in the next section of the game. Also, talking to this guy spawns the Slateport TM shop, which I am going to visit after I wrap around through Meteor Falls and grab the PP up just north of Rustboro City. Aber can then teleport me back to Mauville City, and I go south to Slateport City, buying myself the Hidden Power TM. I'm going to teach this right away in the place of Quick Attack, because now I have a move that can be used against Maxie's Camerupt. I really didn't want to have to rely on Rollout for this battle. Thunderbolt takes care of the Mightyena as well as the Zubat, and then against Camerupt, even though my attack has been lowered, I can still 2-shot with my ground type move. And I have selected Hidden Power Ground specifically because it covers Pokemon like this, as well as Flannery's entire team, because she's next. And Hidden Power Ground will continue being useful all the way into the late game, where I think that it's going to be a go-to move against Steven Stone. I have been fighting the majority of trainers up until this point in the run, so I'm assuming that Pikachu is not going to have problems against Flannery. Numel is first. I have the Soft Sand here, increasing Hidden Power's damage, giving it an effective power of 154. Her lead is a one-shot. Then, against Slugma, I start setting up Rollout, because I want to make sure that I one-shot both the Camerupt and the Torkoal. I'm just barely not able to one-shot the Slugma, which is perfect, so I get a 2nd turn of setup on it with Rollout. Then, with my 3rd turn of the move on Camerupt, I'm able to one-shot, although this was a critical hit, maybe that helped me out. Torkoal's last. While I am poisoned and losing small amounts of health every turn, it doesn't matter, because my 4th turn with Rollout knocks out her ace. I went back to Fall Arbor Town and picked up the Return TM before Norman. This gives me a normal type move that I actually want to use, and I teach it in the place of Slam. Good riddance. My set now is Thunderbolt, Hidden Power Ground, Return, and Rollout. I think that this should be good against Norman, but there are some flaws with this set. At least Pikachu is going to be moving first against all of his Pokemon. Spinda is first. I start setting up rollout here. This is fairly safe, provided I don't get confused 2 turns in a row. I burn my Person Berry and then have a 4th turn of rollout on the second Pokemon. I was hoping he would send in Slacking next, but he doesn't, instead choosing Vigoroth, which means I one-shot it as well as the following Linoon, and then rollout is done by the time I make it to Slacking. But I can counter its use of counter by going for Thunderbolt, a special move, so it does nothing on turn 1. I tried out the damage for return, but it's not doing that much, so I revert back to using Thunderbolt since it can paralyze. Although that might be a downside against the Slacking since it does love to use Facade, which has its base power doubled whenever the user is afflicted by a status condition. Norman uses a Hyper Potion, and while I am able to get the Slacking fairly low, I decided to go for Rollout, just barely don't have enough damage. Pikachu falls asleep because of Yawn. Norman uses another Hyper Potion, and then eventually Slacking attacks with Facade, and that's that. In my second fight, I had terrible luck against the Spinda. I didn't even knock it out because of confusion. Okay, hopefully 3rd time's the charm here. What I can do to time rollout a little bit better for the later stages of the fight is attacking the Spinda once with return, then setting up rollout. This means my 3rd turn is now on the Vigoroth, my 4th turn on the Linoon, and my 5th turn on the Slacking. And of course, rollout is massively powerful at that point, and it one-shots. The next section of the game is actually going to be pretty easy for Pikachu. While the rival does have a Marshtomp, at this point he's kind of irrelevant for solo challenges since I'm so overleveled. He does do a lot of damage with Mudshot, but now that I can't miss with a move like Slam, I have Return instead, I can just knock out his ace in 2 hits. I pass through Fort Tree City, fighting a bunch of trainers on the way, and then fight the rival again outside the department store. This is another battle where he just isn't very good, but neither am I. I chose Rollout here against the Tropius, and I don't think that that's the right choice. Look at how much damage the Marshtomp deals to me. And then I luck out by not missing Rollout, knocking it out. But I'm not in a good position for the following Ludicolo. It uses Absorb, bringing Pikachu down to 3 hit points, and I am so lucky here that Thunderbolt got a critical hit. If it didn't, I'm sure Ludicolo would have survived. After all, this is one of the most trolly defensive Pokemon in the game, and then it would have knocked me out with a follow-up Absorb. Now, I made a little bit of a mistake here. When I arrived in Lily Cove City, I had been fighting so many trainers that I went into the Pokemon Center and healed before the rival fight. This means I no longer have my teleport waypoint set to Fort Tree City, and since I haven't yet fought Winona, I have to backtrack to Fort Tree City on foot. But this gives me a chance to talk about something I'm sure most of you are thinking about: the Light Ball. It's a held item that works exclusively for Pikachu. It doubles Pikachu's special attack from Generation 2 to 3. Then starting in Generation 4, it doubles the power of Pikachu's moves, meaning it affects both special and physical moves. In Generation 5, it's technically changed once again, doubling both attack and special attack, but that makes it essentially the same as it was in Generation 4. It's just affecting a different part of the damage calculation, but the ending result is going to be roughly equivalent. So today in Generation 3, I have access to the worst version of the Light Ball, but there are a lot of held items in Emerald version that are just never accessible because they're far too inconvenient to pick up. This is because I would have to catch wild Pokemon which have a 5% chance to hold the item, and usually those wild Pokemon are not guaranteed encounters in whatever location I'm catching them in. To obtain the Light Ball, I need to find myself a wild Pikachu which has a 5% chance of holding it. Of course, doubling my special attack stat would be great, but what's the chance of running into a Pikachu in the wild? Well, number one, I have to find them in the Safari Zone. It's the only place it's available in Emerald. And while it is available in the very first piece of grass inside of the Safari Zone, the encounter rate for Pikachu is only 5%. So it is so unlikely that I'm going to be able to find myself a Light Ball. I think with these odds, I could spend an hour or even more in the Safari Zone just trying to track down a Pikachu that holds this item. And that's even with me looking at Pokebite, checking if the Pokemon has the held item without catching it. So because of how unlikely I thought it was to get the Light Ball, I'm going to be skipping it in this playthrough. Okay, now I've made it back to Fort Tree City. Let's crush Winona. Thunderbolt is just so good during this fight. I use Return to knock out the Altaria. It goes down in 2 turns. From there, I one-hit the Skarmory, 2-shot the Tropius. Of course, Pelipper gets annoying with Protect, but on the next turn, Thunderbolt hits, and that's it. Inside the Magma hideout, I wasn't really expecting things to play out this way. Maxie ends up being pretty difficult. Mightyena isn't a problem. I can just knock it out with Thunderbolt, but it does take 2 turns, so maybe it is a problem because it's able to hit with Scary Face, lowering Pikachu's speed, and now I'm slower than the Crobat. But he doesn't send it in next, instead choosing Camerupt, and this makes a lot of sense. It's a ground type, Hidden Power Ground can't knock it out in a single turn, and its Earthquake one-shots Pikachu. I tried again, hoping that maybe it just rolled really good damage and there was a chance of me surviving that hit, but no, it doesn't look like there is. It just deletes me again and again with Earthquake, the third time getting a critical hit. Maybe that's what I need to hope for, a critical hit with Pikachu? Well, I can train on wild Pokemon because I'm so close to level 50, go over the damage rounding threshold and then try again, but this is not going to give me enough to one-shot the Camerupt, so I'm still just hoping for a crit, and I still can't survive Earthquake. This is one of the few instances where I'm actually going to use an escape rope, leave the Magma hideout, and fight trainers to level up more. But there just aren't very many good people available left in the playthrough, since I've fought everyone that I wanted to up until this point in the run, anticipating that I would need the maximum level by the end of the playthrough. So at this point, I am just scraping the bottom of the barrel, and training is really slow. I even have to train north of Rustboro City in this little hidden area, which is a location I very rarely come to. Doing this extended training brings me back to Maxi at level 53, but this is still not enough. I have three choices here. Number one, use rare candies, which will be very risky for the late game since I'm going to have to do a lot of training inefficiently then when Pikachu's at a high level. Number two, I could wait for the Mightyena to choose Swagger, increasing my attack stat, which will allow me to one-shot the Camerupt. Or number three, I can just wait for Hidden Power Ground to get a critical hit. I think that synergizing approach 2 and 3 together makes most sense. While I'm knocking out the Mightyena, there is a chance that it will go for Swagger and help me out against the Camerupt. And then if I make it to the Camerupt without an attack boost, maybe I'll get a critical hit. And I do in the very next battle. I am so glad that I did not commit to more training, but I still will have to have a better solution for this battle in my second playthrough. That's one of the reasons I love doing the 2-run format, because if I just luck through a difficult trainer like this, I really haven't escaped them. But for now, I can put Maxi behind me. But there is still one more powerful ground-type Pokemon coming up in the next section of the game. I have to figure out how to defeat Tate and Liza's Claydol. Fighting a bunch of the trainers that come in the next section of the game gets Pikachu to level 59, which for most Pokemon is over-leveled at this point in the run. But most other Pokemon aren't going to need level 100 to beat the game, so typically I use my rare candies before the double battle. But for Pikachu, I'm going to hold off on doing that and attempt things at this level. I don't think it's going to go well. Turn 1, Claydol pretty much always goes for Earthquake, even if the player's second Pokemon is a flying type. In this case, when Earthquake hits, it does so much damage, more than half to Pikachu, so I can only survive one hit from this move. And while I am able to knock out the Claydol with 2 hits from return, the problem is that then they have 2 Pokemon that want to attack Pikachu, and Xatu uses Psychic and Pikachu faints. Once again, I am starting to fight trainers that are really inefficient. I even spend time grinding on wild Pokemon up to 63 before coming back to try again. This doesn't really change anything about the damage ranges. I have to 2-shot the Claydol, I'm getting 2-shot by Earthquake, and then once I've finished off the ground type, they still have 2 Pokemon, and while I am able to knock out the Xatu in a single hit with Thunderbolt, then the Lunatone can just set up Calm Mind, and I'm not able to do much damage to it. Plus, when I attack the Solrock, Thunderbolt doesn't even have enough damage to one-shot, so I can't even make this a 1 versus 1. I tried to fight some of the other trainers in the gym, and I accidentally walked into the Wobbuffet guy. Yeah, he defeated me. It's really frustrating. I had to reset because there was no way to defeat him since his Wobbuffet is so low on health, and Abra is just going to use Struggle and knock it out. I continued my training against wild Pokemon up to level 65. There's a lot of footage here, and I'm skipping through most of it for the sake of your time. Just know that this is starting to feel like Roxanne 2.0. I tried Tate and Liza again multiple times at level 65, and it just still isn't working. My damage ranges against the Solrock are not good enough, so I'm taking it to low health, and this is even worse than taking it to yellow, because then they'll use a Hyper Potion on it repeatedly, and since they're technically 2 trainers, each one of them has 2 Hyper Potions, but they can use these items on any Pokemon in battle, so they could use 4 Hyper Potions on the Solrock, and obviously Pikachu just doesn't have enough time to win then. While I'm grinding against wild Pokemon, I want to say that if Pikachu spawned in a patch of grass like this, I think that going for the Light Ball would have made made sense for this first playthrough, because I would be able to fight Pokemon, grind up to a higher level while searching for the light ball. But since you have to obtain it in the Safari Zone, that isn't the case. Although I think there would have been another advantage if an electric type spawned in a grass patch like this, because I would have realized something else, which I'm sure some of you have already left comments about. Let's get back to Tate and Liza though. At level 67, I try and still it's not working, so I did decide to use rare candies, a total of 6, boosting Pikachu up to level 73. Right away, this appears to be worse than it was at the lower level, because now I'm doing enough damage to the Claydol that they want to heal it with hyper potions. I just got lucky here and got a crit on my second turn, knocking it out from full HP. Thunderbolt one-shots Xatu, Soul Rock comes in, I get hit by Psychic but don't take that much damage. Unfortunately, still at level 73, I am unable to one-shot the rock type. Lunatone sets up, Soul Rock sets up, it eats its Citrus Berry, and then they go for Flamethrower plus Psychic, knocking Pikachu out. Without the critical hit, I'm just going to need to use more rare candies. And so I take Pikachu up to level 78 before trying again. And then I critical hit the Claydol right away, taking no damage from Earthquake. At the higher level, things are easier now because I can one-shot the Soul Rock with Thunderbolt. This took so long, but at long last, the 7th gym leader is defeated, and I earn myself the badge that boosts both of my special stats. The Space Center battle against Maxie and Tabitha isn't an issue, even though their camera up have Earthquake. I'm just so over-leveled at this point, and I have Hidden Power Ground. Archie is of course incredibly simple, and next is Juan, who I'm not going to give an intro to because he doesn't deserve it. Pikachu crushes his team of water types. Obviously, Wally is not much of a threat, so this section of the game is pretty easy, but Pikachu's time right now is not impressing anyone. Because I had to use so many rare candies against Tate and Liza, I think that the likelihood that Pikachu beats this run under 3 hours is starting to become less and less likely. Maybe if it just speeds its way through the Elite Four, there is a chance, but I don't think that that's going to be the case. I made one compromise when selecting Hidden Power Ground. I thought that it was going to be more useful against Steven Stone, and I really believed that that was going to be the most difficult battle in the entire playthrough. But I knew if I didn't go with Hidden Power Ice, that Drake had the potential to be quite difficult with his Flygon. Alright, let's get into the Elite Four and see how it goes. Sydney is first, and this battle is just not very difficult. With Thunderbolt and Return, I can crush most of his Pokemon. I have to two-shot the Shiftry, which could get annoying with Double Team or Torment, but in the end, it's not an issue. Phoebe's a little bit frustrating to fight if I don't have Substitute on my set, but I wanted to keep my current moves. Luckily for me, the Dusclops just doesn't go for Curse, and I knock it out. Then the second Dusclops goes down in 2 turns, and from there, the remainder of her Pokemon are one-shots with Thunderbolt. So this fight was actually fairly easy, although it did require a little bit of luck. Glacia is very simple because she has 3 water types. The Glalie do survive single hits, but even if they drop my speed, Pikachu is just outrageously fast, so it's moving first against everything. Remember, the fastest Pokemon in the entire game is Steven Stone's Claydol with 140 speed. Pikachu is almost that fast with -1. Okay, moment of truth, Drake. I thought that setting up Rollout here might be the best play to have massive damage against the Flygon, but that doesn't end up being the case. The Shelgon is just going to break my combo over and over again with Protect, so this was never going to work. And because I tried to set up Rollout here, I got hit by Rock Tomb, dropping my speed twice, so Flygon can move first with Earthquake, and that's a loss. I did take the Blackout here because I think I'm working towards level 100, even in the best case scenario. Unfortunately, the second time through the league, I did end up losing to Phoebe. But again, I'll just take the experience, Blackout, and try again. I make it back to Drake. You'll notice here that I'm just using the same strategy. This is because I am intending to just continuously Blackout here. If you want to train against the Elite Four, it's actually better to lose to them because you don't have to see all the dialogue that Wallace has after you beat him. And then you don't go back to the first city, you don't have to withdraw an HM user to fly back to the league and then fight them again. So playing poorly against Drake is actually facilitating faster training for Pikachu, because I know that I'm going to need level 100 for the end of the game. I trained until I had a total of 23 Blackouts. At this point, Pikachu is level 93, and I still have some rare candies left over. Everything has lined up now for me to beat the Elite Four, but to make that possible, I'm going to go back to the department store and teach Substitute in the place of Hidden Power Ground. Once Glacia is defeated, Pikachu is perfectly at level 94, and I can use 4 rare candies to bring it to level 98 before fighting Drake. Substitute lets me block the speed drops from Rock Tomb. I thought then setting up Rollout would be the right choice. No, this is obviously not the play. In retrospect, it makes very little sense. I tried this twice, and it's just terrible level, and then finally I figure out what I should be doing. Substitute Thunderbolt to knock out the Shelgon, and then Return on the Flygon. Saying those two names back to back really convinces me that Bagon, Shelgon, and Flygon were supposed to be the same evolutionary line. Anyway, Return is able to one-shot the Flygon. Beyond that, the remainder of the fight's pretty easy just because Pikachu is so ridiculously overleveled. Time for Wallace. This fight is so easy. Thunderbolt just crushes his team members. The only Pokemon that survives is the Whiscash, because I have to use Return after Gyarados triggered Intimidate. Oh wait, I lied. Actually, the Ludicolo also survives. Of course it does. This thing is so annoying. Pikachu ends up getting a Wallace split of 2 hours, 57 minutes, and 28 seconds. That's just a little bit too slow for me to beat Steven Stone under 3 hours, because I do want to pick up the leftovers on the SS title. While doing this, I train to level 99, and then inside of the Safari Zone, I can pick up one more rare candy, boosting Pikachu to level 100. First, I am going to try to beat Steven Stone honorably, not using Double Team, and if that's not working, then I will resort to the cheesy move in order to get a win. Steven's Skarmory is a pretty good Pokemon for Pikachu to go up against right away. It can't do much damage with either Aerial Ace or Steel Wing, giving me time to set up Substitute, and also potentially to set up Rollout if I want. But I just go for Thunderbolt, get a critical hit, and one-shot his lead. Aggron comes in next. Thunderbolt is neutral against it, but I can't do enough damage to one-shot, so I have my Substitute broken by Earthquake, Steven Stone uses a full restore, and then I knock out his second Pokemon. The problem is, Metagross follows, and I can't do enough damage to it. Thunderbolt is doing roughly half, but just barely not enough to two-shot. And I don't even get to try because Earthquake one-shots Pikachu from full health. Okay, so Rollout's obviously not going to be a good choice here. Instead, I can use Hidden Power Ground in its place. By the way, the whole reason I am holding on to Return is just so I have damage against the Claydol, since it is immune to both Thunderbolt and Hidden Power Ground. Without a critical hit, I can one-shot the Skarmory, and then against Aggron, I have super effective damage with Hidden Power, which I thought would be able to one-shot, but it isn't because it's physical. Aggron just goes for Solar Beam though, and then I knock it out for free. Metagross follows. I was anticipating that Hidden Power Ground would do more damage when compared with Thunderbolt because Pikachu has higher physical attack, but Metagross has higher physical defense by quite a bit as well. Due to this, it takes less damage than Thunderbolt did in the previous battle. Luckily I have a substitute, and Metagross isn't able to one-shot Pikachu this time when it uses Earthquake. Then after Citrus Berry, Steven Stone is no longer prioritizing a full restore, so my follow-up Thunderbolt finishes his ace. But then Claydol comes in, Pikachu's on red health, and unless I crit with Return, I'm not gonna one-shot. I don't get the critical hit, I do what looks like less than half, and then Claydol finishes me with Earthquake. Okay, time to use Double Team. I don't care. I can set up on the Skarmory since it's very rarely breaking my substitutes, and then from there, I'm basically not gonna take damage, and even if I do, I can just re-establish Substitute. The only problem is that I'm using a moveset that has Thunderbolt and Hidden Power. I do not have damage against the Claydol, but I wasn't too worried about this. I figured with Double Team and Substitute, I can just wait until it runs out of Earthquake and then use Struggle to knock out his remaining Pokemon. But he did a little bit of a weird thing. He switched out the Metagross instead of letting it faint, sending in Claydol next. I played for the win here, spamming out all of my PP, knocking the Claydol out, and this does work, but then Metagross comes back in, and I can't do much damage to it. Plus, it still has Earthquake, and it is able to break my Substitute, and I can't set up a new one. Because of this, it hits one more Earthquake and Pikachu faints. Even though it was using the Double Team strategy, it's still not able to win. But my moveset was the problem. If I have direct damage against the Claydol, I think that I can win. So I teach Brick Break in the place of Hidden Power Ground. And as soon as I did this, I was immediately disappointed in myself for going with this type of Hidden Power, because if it's not useful against Steven Stone, I could have had Hidden Power Ice for Drake, which would have potentially sped up my training. I could have always blacked out intentionally against Wallace at the end of the league if I wanted to train more quickly, or I could potentially run a different type of Hidden Power which might help for some of the other battles, like Tate and Liza or Maxi. Also, I mentioned a PP up earlier in this run. I have collected a total of 6. These are helpful for me to increase the number of times that I can use Brick Break during the fight, so that hopefully I won't run out of the move. The next battle against Steven Stone takes so long. I set up Double Team, and then I have to chip away at most of his Pokemon. Luckily for me, Double Team team is really good, and Steven Stone is just not up to the task. Brick Break is way better against the Clay Doll, even though it's doing very little damage, and Steven Stone is using full restores here, so it takes even longer to finish off the Psychic type. Also, it got an Omni boost with Ancient Power along the way, which is frustrating, but it doesn't end up changing the result. I move on to the Cradily. I still have uses of Brick Break left over, so I have super effective damage, and I'm able to finish both it and the Armaldo. In my first Pokemon Emerald playthrough with Pikachu, I get a time of 3 hours, 10 minutes, and 18 seconds. With 22 resets, 23 blackouts, I finished the game at level 100 using Double Team with a game time of 11 hours and 2 minutes. Okay, who's ready for everything to change? I want to make Pikachu absolutely crush the game in my second playthrough. Well, crush the game as much as an electric type can when it has to fight Roxanne as the first gym leader. This is still a brutal start to the run. Last time I was able to beat Roxanne at level 23, but in testing that didn't seem as likely as winning at level 25. And because this is an extremely long first split, I did not want to restart these playthroughs over and over again, so I decided to go for the more conservative strategy. In my previous run, I beat Roxanne in a time of 30 minutes and 11 seconds, so that was my time to beat with this new strategy. And it is possible, just because I'm not going to be getting a bunch of blackouts trying to figure out which level I should be fighting her at. The strategy is simple. Quick Attack and Slam for damage dealing moves, Growl and Tail Whip to lower attack and defense, and then I just hope with an Oran Berry. Well, it's not exactly that. I do know that one Tail Whip usually puts the Geodude in potion range for Roxanne, and in this case, while the first one goes down without getting a potion, the second one gets 2. Because of that, she can't heal the Nose Pass very well, and I end up winning on my first attempt, getting a Roxanne split of 30 minutes and 7 seconds. So I'm still 4 seconds faster in the first split despite leveling 2 more times. One of the reasons I liked the overleveling strategy for Roxanne is because then I can level 1 more time to 26 and get Thunderbolt prior to Brawly. And it has one-shots on all of his Pokemon, making this a trivial gym battle. On my way to Mauville City, I want to fight the rival after doing extensive training. This has brought Pikachu to level 30 by the time I'm fighting the Marshtomp. And at this level, Slam has a 2-shot. For Pikachu, unfortunately, the early game features 2 really brutal battles. Watson is the second one. I just need to get lucky here using the rollout strategy. It is better than anything else I have available to me at this point in the game, so if I miss, I lose, and if I get paralyzed too early, I also lose. There's also the chance that while I set up rollout, the Voltorb goes for self-destruct, inflicting massive damage, which will also be a reset. It took 5 resets, but this is faster than grinding higher into the 30s. And I'm still faster than my first playthrough's time of 50 minutes and 52 seconds, now by a more significant margin. Okay, the big insight that I learned from the first playthrough. I need Hidden Power Ice to make Drake manageable during the league, which is going to streamline late game training. This is especially important for Pokemon that are going to need a maximum level to beat Steven Stone, but Pikachu isn't going to need max level. It's also not going to need Double Team. Hidden Power Ice also helps out in this next section of the game. It gives me special damage that I can hit Pokemon like this Camerupt with if I really want. But in this case, I'm just using Secret Power. Luckily, the Camerupt doesn't know that it should be spamming Magnitude. As you can see here, it goes for Magnitude on turn 1, followed by Ember. Flannery is another case where if I miss rollout, I just lose. It does happen once because I miss on Torkoal and then get hit by an Overheat, but on my second attempt, I just crush her entire team. I am still at the mercy of rollout against Norman, but I do want to point out here that I've gone for a different nature. Quiet in this case, raising special attack and lowering speed. Damage ranges here at level 40, which was my target level for this fight, are pretty good. A 70.7% chance one-shot on the Spinda with Thunderbolt, an 88.3% chance on the Vigoroth, a 2-hit on Linoon, and a 3-hit on Slacking. And I can also chain together rollout with a Person Berry from the start to knock out his first 3 Pokemon very quickly, then using Thunderbolt to finish the Slacking. I had 2 resets, but overall I was still really happy with this playthrough. Okay, let's talk about the biggest change, because I'm sure some of you have already figured it out. Instead of fighting Winona right away, even though my moveset is incredible against her Pokemon, I'm gonna go to Lily Cove City and teach Substitute in the place of Rollout. I didn't teach this move early last time to have more moveset flexibility and keep Rollout around for longer, but this time I know that I don't need the Rock move anymore. And having Substitute throughout the mid-game is a big help for Pikachu. You know what else is a big help for Pikachu? A player who actually knows how abilities work. So, starting in Pokemon Emerald, Static will increase the chance of wild encounters that are electric types to 50% if an electric type Pokemon exists within the encounter chart. Let's just review revisit the Safari Zone encounter chart, the only electric type here is Pikachu. So if I have a Pokemon with static on my team, it increases the chance of me to see this Pikachu to 50%, meaning every other encounter is going to be a Pikachu, which has a 5% chance of holding the light ball. So unlike I thought before, it's not actually unlikely to find this item. I tested it before this run and it took me 8 minutes to get the light ball. While that is a major time commitment, it's still faster than grinding to the maximum level and then using double team for the final battle, which feels like a moral defeat. It is so nice to know that Pikachu can play this game honorably. So here's the thing about testing. I did not collect multiple attempts of data, seeing how long it would take me to get the light ball on each instance. This means maybe 8 minutes is an outlier. Maybe it takes 16 minutes. Maybe it takes 30 minutes. Maybe this run is going to get completely punished because of this decision. No, it's not. I got the light ball in 2 minutes, suggesting that maybe my test was the unlucky result. With the light bulb, my special attack is now doubled, so goodbye Winona. Then, Maxi in the volcano is not nearly as difficult. Hidden Power Ice plus the light ball means I can two-shot the Camerupt, and with Substitute, I take no damage from its first Earthquake. This completely solves him in this battle, and I have no resets here. While the early game is luck-based, from here on out, Pikachu has a plan, and it's consistent. You'll notice a couple resets pop up that I'm not going to talk about. I did make some mistakes and just quickly reset, grabbing an item or an extra level, something like that. This is a long and exhausting playthrough, and I played both the first run and the second run in the same day. I started out at 9 AM, and I finished at 7:30 PM. Sometimes optimization takes a lot longer than I was hoping. The next target level is 58 for Tate and Liza. By the way, without running the light ball, I was targeting level 75 for this battle because I did optimize out an entire route for Pikachu to beat the game without this item. But at level 58, I can one-shot the Claydol with Hidden Power Ice, so I'm never hit by Earthquake. Then they send in Lunatone, which I can one-shot using Thunderbolt. Xatu goes for Calm Mind, but this is okay because with the light ball, I still have a one-shot using Thunderbolt, and I'm going to target it next because the Soul Rock is just going to set up Sunny Day and then faint to my next Thunderbolt. Pikachu's performance here against Tate and Liza should be abominable, but it isn't when it has Hidden Power Ice and the light ball. And that propels it into the late game setup for success, because I'm a low level starting the Elite Four, 62, and I am going to blackout grind here, but I can defeat more trainers during the league now. With Hidden Power Ice, Drake is trivial, so I'm always gaining experience from his entire team. And then against Wallace, I can defeat both his Wailord and Gyarados for experience, and then simply let the Whiscash knock me out with Earthquake. Losing here is faster than defeating Wallace, going through all the text, the save screen, resetting, and then flying back to Evergrande City. So this plays perfectly into Pikachu's plan. My goal now is to train until level 75. At that point, I'm going to use 13 rare candies to go all the way up to level 88. The reason this is perfect is because then fighting the remaining Elite Four members are going to get Pikachu to level 89. Since my level is so much higher now, I can just use the light ball with Hidden Power Ice and return to knock out Wallace's Whiscash, and from there the remaining Pokemon on his team aren't an issue to deal with. Alright, the final steps in this run, because we're going to fight Steven Stone with a considerably different moveset. In the abandoned ship, I pick up the Rain Dance TM. I grab this Waterfall Candy, which is my final one in the run, and it's going to boost Pikachu to level 90. I made a small mistake here. I forgot to go to the move tutor. I tried fighting Steven, realized immediately, reset, went back to the tutor so that I could switch out Thunderbolt for Thunder. Let's go through damage ranges on all of Steven's Pokemon. For these, I am going to assume that the Rain is active so that Thunder bypasses accuracy checks. So, guaranteed one hit on Skarmory, guaranteed one hit on Aggron, a 49.5% chance to one-shot the Metagross. Then, with Hidden Power Ice, I can two-shot the Claydol, two-shot the Cradily, and three-shot the Armaldo. Although, the Armaldo takes more damage from Thunder, so once again, it is a one-shot. I just want to say that the Light Ball makes Pikachu awe-inspiring. This run, which was so brutal at the end of the game previously, is now kind of easy. The only resets that I've got since I picked up the light ball are purely player error, and the blackouts were all intentional. Turn 1 you saw I set up Substitute, then Rain Dance, followed by Thunder to knock out the Skarmory. Steven Stone sends in Aggron second, so this one is free, followed by Metagross. And it's good that I have 2 turns of Rain Dance left over, so if I don't get the KO, I can roll again for it, but I get it right away in this case. 2 hits to knock out the Claydol, my substitute tanks the Earthquake, and then I move on to his final 2 Pokemon. Well, he uses some full restores here, of course he does. He wants to waste my time, but I would much rather him use them here rather than on the Cradily. It could get bad if it Ancient Powers and gets an Omni Boost and then he starts healing it. Also, Cradily can confuse because I've lost my substitute and I'm not going to try to set it up again. I don't think that Pikachu needs to play defensive at this point in the battle. It can 2-shot the Grass type, and then against Armaldo, instead of setting up Rain Dance, I think the safest thing is to just go for Thunder. In this case, I damage myself in confusion, Armaldo hits Ancient Power, but Pikachu hangs on with 12 hit points, giving it another chance to roll the dice, and gambling with Thunder pays off. This time it hits, and Armaldo goes down. In my second run with it, I get a time of 2 hours, 4 minutes, and 26 seconds, with 11 resets, 4 blackouts at level 90. This is a game time of 7 hours and 48 minutes. Compared to run number 1, I improved Pikachu's results by 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 51 seconds of real time. I shaved off 11 resets and 19 blackouts. I also beat the game 10 levels lower with a game time that was 3 hours and 14 minutes faster. Despite some silly player errors and luck that I wasn't so happy with against Watson, Flannery, and Norman, I'm still overall quite happy with this Pikachu result. And I know if someone else plays this route that you're gonna get a better time than I am, at least if you play slightly cleaner. Here are the splits throughout the entire run. You'll notice that they're very close in the early game. This is just cause we don't start seeing major improvements until I pick up the Light Ball, and then after Winona, the Maxi 2 split is 12 minutes and 40 seconds ahead. From there, the next major jump is right away at Tate and Liza, 41 minutes and 28 seconds ahead, and then Pikachu builds on its advantage once again at Drake. You can also see this in the game time by trainer graph. The 2 runs are very close together in the early game, but then by the late game, things have diverged significantly because of the Light Ball. This item is really important for Pikachu. Also, the timeline graphic makes this look like 2 different Pokemon. I can't believe how long the Tate and Liza split is in the first run. I actually ended up beating Tate and Liza in a time that took longer than beating the entire game with Pikachu when running the Light Ball. Here's the summary graphic of my final playthrough, which ends up being pretty long, so you're gonna have to zoom in to see the details. I'm hoping that someone else is gonna run this Pokemon and get a time under 2 hours. I just don't have it in me, at least right now. Maybe I'll come back in the future and stream a Light Ball Pikachu run in Emerald, because this is a fun playthrough, even though it's a significant time commitment. In my first playthrough tier list, Pikachu's results fall between Shiftry and Tropius. As far as an electric type goes, this is better than the playthrough I did before with Manectric, and that's my first Pikachu result. Also, Pokemon like Shiftry, Tropius, Sableye, even Aggron and Jirachi getting 3-hour times is just purely a product of my lack of experience with Emerald when I played them. Swampert is another case like this. Its result of 3 hours and 28 minutes is abysmally bad, and then if we go over to the follow-up tier list, you'll notice that Swampert is in second place. Today, with its follow-up results, Pikachu still didn't perform well in the overall scope of Pokemon Emerald runs. It earned itself a position in the Bruno tier behind Latios, ahead of Nincada. Even though this result might not look good, I still think that Pikachu did an amazing improvement between the 2 runs. And for a first stage electric type soloing a game with a boss at the end that has Pokemon with Earthquake, I'm very happy with how this run went. No double team, and I think that's an achievement. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you tomorrow when early daily December continues.